Hey y'all, I'm JD and welcome back to the Dimensions Woodworks Woodshop. Today we've got a really special project that I'm so glad I got to be a part of. I reached out to our local home developer, Elliott Homes, who does the annual St. Jude Dream Home in our area on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I said I would like to donate a piece and asked what they would like. They said they would want a swing for the front porch. So I chose one with a really cool design and I hope you guys like it. You stick around and I'll show you just how we made it. Let's go.
So we start out the project over at Jubilee Specialty Wood Products in Mobile, Alabama. The day I went, they actually had a special guest. They have a new lumberyard cat hanging out, Miss Freya. Got a couple shots of her there. But they also have a great selection of domestics, exotics, and they actually really helped out with this build and donated the wood at their cost for this great cause. You can choose from the stock in the warehouse, or in this case I got them to pull a pack of some special product for this project.
Lumberyard rules. Don't be an asshole. Put the stack back the way you found it.
Some of the boards we had to trim and cut in half just so they fit on my trailer a little bit better, and then my man Stuart helped me load the trailer up so we could get it on the road. After the lumber is unloaded, the first order of business is to make some templates out of some plywood because there are a lot of repeated pieces in this build and we want to make sure that they're all exactly the same. I begin with the seat supports with this arch in it. I used a trick where I just used a piece of string and a couple of nails to get a rough arch, and then I cut it in half after I had reached the halfway point on the bandsaw so I could flip it over and make a mirrored copy and make sure that it was exact all the way through. Now it was time to begin to make the templates for the armrest supports as well as the seat backs, which are pretty simple because I can use this compass to make an arch at the top of the piece. On all of the template pieces, I cut just a little bit outside of the line and then bring it to the line with the sander. Now that the templates are dialed in and I'm happy with how they look, I can begin to break down the actual stock for those pieces, get it milled flat and square, and then I can transfer the template to the actual pieces and parts for the swing build. I use some double-sided tape to stick the template down to the actual stock. Then I make a rough outline to take to the bandsaw and remove the bulk of the material. Again, with this process, I'm going to cut just a little bit outside of the lines, and we're going to get it really dialed in a bit with a flush trim router. Because this stock was 2 inches thick and most of your flush trim bits only go up to 1 inch, I had to use a combination of bits to achieve the profile. I had to run the one on the top first and then basically created another reference face there as you see, then used a bottom bearing bit to finish out the cut and get it flush all the way around. Now it's time to begin the layout for the mortise and tenon joinery that I chose to use to hold this piece together. Just marking them exactly with my marking tools and then transferring those over to the table saw. Because the back of this piece is at a 5-degree angle, I had to use a combination of a fence with my miter gauge as well as the tilt on my blade to make sure that that cut was true all the way around the tenon. Then to cut the mortises, I used a plunge router to remove the bulk of the waste and then cleaned up the inside of the mortise with a chisel. After the dry fit of the frame looked good and everything fit well, it was time to turn our attention to the decorative element in the seat back, that Chippendale style pattern. And I used this little trick on the miter saw to get everything to fit very snugly. I cut it a bit proud of the line and then sneak up on the cut a little at a time, and then secured those pieces in place with a dowel joint. I begin with all the vertical pieces in the seat back, make sure that they are secured, and then we start to fit our X braces and smaller decorative pieces a little bit at a time. I found more success in actually clamping these pieces in place rather than trying to take measurements and angles to get the most accurate fit. Then I get the angles off of my markings to set my miter gauge and make the cuts. The main X braces will be joined together in the middle with a half lap joint. As you see here, half the material will be removed from one side and then the other, then they will fit tightly together. After ensuring everything fits well, I take those pieces out of the seat back, add glue and dowels to secure everything, and put them back in place. Then to begin to add the rest of the decorative pieces, I cut a spacer and use the same method as before. I hold them into place, then mark those angles. After the angles are marked, I get a measurement of what that angle is, set the miter gauge, and make those cuts. Now that all the pieces for the seat back are cut, it's time to disassemble the dry fit, get everything glued up and clamped back into place so it's in its permanent location. After the glue on the main components of the seat back have had a chance to cure, it's time to add the little decorative pieces. Since there's not really a good way to do this other than an end grain glue up, I like to really soak and saturate that end grain and allow that to sit in, tack up a little bit, and then right before installing, add a fresh coat of wood glue and a little bit of super glue just to hold it in place and keep it from moving. I pop it with a couple of brad nails to hold it into place while the glue cures. Now it's time to shape the armrest support into the curved piece of the armrest. I marked out a space where I didn't want to go beyond. I used a grinder with a sanding disc to remove the bulk of the material, then tightened it up a little bit with my random orbital sander. Once the armrest was in place, I could really get a good read on where I needed to take away a little bit more and got it down until I was happy with the way it looked and felt. Now it was time to glue the bottom frame to the seat back frame, and when I have these angled glue ups, I always like to give myself a bit of a guide block that's cut at the same angle as the piece I'm trying to mate so that it gives the clamp face a 90-degree angle to grab. Now that the frame is all glued into place, it's time to start adding the slats. And I always like to put a bit of a chamfer on my seat slats just to keep from pinching in the legs when you're sitting on the swing, or any seat for that matter. And it adds a nice little aesthetic, gives you just a little touch of detail that really goes a long way. To secure the slats, I cut myself some spacers yet again to make sure that it had even spacing all the way throughout. Just run a little bead of glue and a couple of brad nails in each cross member of the seat, and it will give you a nice secure connection once the glue is dry. Now for the finish on this one, they wanted a bit of an antiqued white, and I achieved that finish by using some chalk paint that I diluted just with water, and as I sprayed, I would spray a small section and then come back and wipe it down so that the wood grain shone through in certain places. Then it was time to add the eye bolts, or the hardware that was used to hang the swing itself. The chains are going to connect to these later and be secured to the beam that they're going in. I wanted to recess that front one so that you didn't have a bolt sticking out near your leg and you would be quite uncomfortable to stand up into the edge of that bolt. So I recessed it back into the armrest support a bit just to hide it. But the one in the back was mostly out of the way, so we were good to go on that one. And just because the swing will be living outside, it's undercover on a porch, but we want to give it a little more protection. I added a bit of Total Boat Halcyon on top of the paint just to give it one more layer of protection from the elements. After the clear coat has had time to dry, it's time to go ahead and reinstall the hardware, and we're ready to get it loaded up and take it to the location and hang the swing. And after arriving on location at this beautiful St. Jude dream home, we go ahead and take out the swing hanging hardware, get everything pre-drilled and sunk into that beam to support the weight of the swing. I always like to go a bit overboard with the capacity of my chains on these builds just to make sure nothing bad happens down the road. I find all of the chain as well as the hardware kits at my local tractor supply company. They seem to work the best and have the best pricing for me. Although on this one I was going to try a little something new and try these springs to give it a little bit of cushion. I forgot on the initial one, so I had to take it down and add the springs back in. And typically to find the height at which I want the swing to rest, I make the first two contact points, then lift the swing up. You could see there that it was way too high, so I adjust it down until I get it where I feel it's comfortable to sit in. Then I make my first cuts on the chain and use the leftover lengths of chain to connect the back to the top with some S-hooks. And of course you always have to test it out, make sure that it's holding weight all right, and it's just nice to sit down after a long day of work. And I also thought that this was really cool that they incorporated that same pattern into the banisters and the stairwell as soon as you walk in the front door. So on the front porch you see that, and then as soon as you walk in the front door you see that same pattern repeated there in the stairs.
Thanks so much for watching, y'all. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos just like this one. Huge shout out to Elliott Homes for not only building and donating this magnificent home, but allowing me to be just a small part of the process. They raised $800,000 for the cause in just about 6 weeks. That's awesome. Another huge shout out to Jubilee Specialty Wood Products over in Mobile, Alabama, again for donating the lumber at cost for me to be able to build the swing. There will be detailed plans down in the description if you'd like to build the swing yourself. And until next time, don't forget to get better every day.